Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Teresa Conroy-Roth, and you're watching Lightning Leadership. With me today is someone I admire very, very much, and he knows it. Known him for years. I've been a friend, and has been side by side on a number of different projects. And I'm so excited to bring to you today, Glenn Keller.
Well, hey, thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I mean, all of that, is double back on you for sure.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So we've had a number of different conversations, and had a number of different lunches, and have known you for years. And this topic that came up a couple weeks ago, which was moments that change your life. And we thought it would be a good idea for a podcast. And here we are, because I've had a chance to really think about it. And there are some very big moments that at the time seemed very little, right? That changed me, both personally and professionally. So I really want to dive into it with you. This is, I think, going to be a lot of fun. So, Glenn, from a personal perspective, let's go there first.
Okay.
From a personal perspective, what was a moment or two that changed your life?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story with bookends.
Okay.
With bookends that are 60 years apart.
All right.
So when I was about 6 years old, my parents were separated. And this was a weekend where my father, quote unquote, had me.
Okay.
And so I was over at his place with his new girlfriend or whatever. And, like all kids at that time, this is in Queens, and I was, sent out to go be feral. Go outside and you don't know anybody, but I'm sure you'll find somebody to play with, right?
Yes, I was feral too. I was a feral
6-year-olds. I'm kind of wandering around looking for somebody. And
Yep.
I found some slightly older kids to hang out with. And so we're talking, whatever. And here comes a kid about my age walking down the opposite side of the street. And one of the older kids said, "Hey, why don't you throw a rock at that kid?"
Oh, no.
Of course, I want to fit in, and I'm all of 6-year-old stupid boy. So I will tell you, I have never made a more accurate, spot-on throw in my entire life.
Oh
And
my
it
gosh.
struck that poor kid right in the center of the forehead. And if you know head wounds, I mean, it opened up a cut. It opened up a cut. It looked much worse than it was because there was like blood all over the place. Well, in the vernacular of the day, everybody splits. Right?
They run as fast as they can away from you, and you're
right. And I go tearing, back to my father's apartment or whatever, and thinking, I'll just wait this out. But sure enough, not too long later, comes like an angry pounding at the door. Right, this is the mother, obviously, in a rage. I don't know what went on between them, but I know after my father dropped me off at home, I never saw him again in my entire life.
Your dad, the kid, or your dad?
My dad. That was it. I never saw my father again after that. So in my mind,
what?
This was 100% my fault. If I had not hit that kid with that rock, that would have never happened. Now, you look back on that all those years later and you say, well, that's ridiculous. But when you're a little kid, I mean, no matter what my mother said about how big of a jerk he was, there was always in my mind, I caused this. And it's amazing how long that persists.
Oh, man.
Into life, even into adulthood.
Yeah,
and well-meaning relatives along the way, like I had this one aunt that I loved to death on my mother's side, and she said, Glenn, maybe you should I was like 40, so maybe you should reach out to your father. Don't you think maybe you could reconcile, right? As if it's kind of an equal thing, like we're both at fault here. Bury the hatchet or whatever. I was like, of course, hey, if he wanted to reach out to me, he could, but he never did. Then let's get to the 60 years later part. As you know, I write a blog.
You do?
And I wrote a blog post about my father. And sometimes you wonder if things happen for a reason. This is even why I started the whole blog. I don't know. But after I post that, I get an email on my blog account, and it's this woman. Long story short, she said, "I think I'm your sister." And I never knew I had a sister. It kind of makes sense now that I thought about it. But, we went through the normal, back and forth. That's crazy, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was 100%, right? She was my sister.
Wow.
And even if she even had photographs. And I was 6 years older than her. And
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
she had a picture of me holding her on my lap when I was 6 years old that
wow.
I had no idea. You don't remember stuff
You
back
don't
then.
remember that
Or
stuff.
they lied to me and said, it's your cousin or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, and it
Wow.
was definitely me. So after I got, we told each other stories. And after I got to hear her story,
Yeah.
uh, he didn't abandon her until she was about 10.
Okay.
And after I listened to her and what she went through, I realized that I was the lucky one. I mean, by far. My father, I'm not talking about like, he wasn't a good human being or whatever. I'm talking about this guy is like superhero villain evil. This
Oh,
was a
wow.
bad man, a man that probably belonged in jail. And
That's
that's
awful.
yeah,
That's awful.
that's what she grew up with.
Yeah.
And what this did for her is my grandparents disowned my father right after he left because
Yeah.
they wanted to stay with the golden grandchild, of course.
Because
And
they did.
she because he was disowned, she never knew. She'd never met her grandparents. She never knew
Oh,
that her
man.
father had a brother and sister, so she'd never met her aunt and uncle, which were truly wonderful people. And
Wow.
she never knew that she had 5 cousins sitting out there.
Oh,
Never
wow.
knew anything about that part of the family.
Yeah.
So it was funny. We were talking about it. She says, "Yeah, I've got a son that's an electrician." I said, "Well, our dad was an electrician at one time." Had no clue because it was way
Oh,
before my time and even before her time as well.
wow.
And here's her son's an electrician. And I said, your uncle that you never
Yeah.
met was an electrician too. And oh, by the way, 2 of your 5 cousins were electricians. And then she said, yeah, well, my daughter was in the Navy. I said, okay, your one girl cousin was in the Navy. And a lot of coincidence there, but it was really kind of interesting that we found out all that stuff. But what it
That's
did for
fun.
me, I found out some things I didn't know, obviously. It kind of settled in my mind that, oh my God, yeah, this is like, I'm lucky. This is a bad
Yeah.
person. So, yeah, closure for
Good
sure.
deal.
And it took 60 years and it took a
Yeah.
bullet twist.
Wow. Wow. I think from a personal, I was thinking about this one from a personal perspective. I think about the ages for me from 21 to 25 was
Mhm.
pretty tumultuous for me. There were a lot of things going on. If you would have asked me if I knew myself, I would have said yes. I absolutely know myself. I'm 100% confident, had some go figure attitude.
Mhm.
But there were really some things that happened during that time period, both personally and professionally, that really changed who I was. And I think for me, growing up in a conservative Irish Catholic background and being the third daughter with an age difference between the other two, I spent a lot of time growing up with my dad and my dad's uncle and my dad's families because my mom was off, dealing with things that she needed to deal with, my older sisters were 16 and 18 and I was 10, right? So obviously
Mhm.
I'm going to spend more time with dad. But because of that, I think I got to know him different. I got to focus on the things that he liked to focus on. I probably more personality style, similar to him, just with silliness and the gift of gab, and But I spent a lot of time hanging out with my dad and my uncle Joe. And so fast forward, I was a junior in college, and my grandfather had passed.
Mhm.
And so we're at the funeral of my grandfather, and one of my aunts who's recently passed that I was close to my whole life, um, said at the funeral, right? The casket's still there. Okay, well, I want to get a picture. I want to get a picture. And so I, went up and she's like, of all the name carriers, want to get a picture. And I went up
Mhm.
and because I was, 20, 21 years old. And she said, oh, no, not you, Teresa. You need to sit down. And I remember looking at her going, what? Why can't I want to take a picture? And she's like, Teresa, you're not a boy. So go ahead and sit down. And I remember it, but it was how she said it, right? For me, things were already kind of chaotic in my life, that I just thought, oh my gosh, she's not going to take a picture with me because I'm not a boy. And so that was, I think, for me, the first time growing up, right, with my dad and my uncle Joe. I just assumed that I was like everybody else, right, and that the family saw me that way. And it was intense. I mean, looking back, and probably one of the reasons why I hyphenate, just to kind of keep that. It doesn't matter if you're the third daughter or three strikes, you're out kind of scenario,
Mhm.
but just the gender stereotyping, right? And that becomes your normative,
Yeah.
and that becomes who you are. And so I got a bit of rebellion in me, because of it and from it. And so yeah, that was a doozy for me. Just you get it sometimes from the outside world. It's another thing to have it inside your world.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the first time that I really went, no, I'm not seeing any different. Okay, I am.
Wow. Wow. The temerity of thinking that you should stand up there and get your picture with the boys.
Oh yeah.
Imagine.
Just assumed, right?
Yeah.
And I do it all the time now with, events that we go to, and,
Mhm.
you lose track of the times that you're the
Mhm.
only chick in the room, but that's another story for another day. So professionally, tell me about a moment that changed your life
Okay.
professionally.
Okay. Well, this seems like a good segue into this next story
Okay.
because it's a story about young men. It's a bit of a FAFO story, as the young people like to say. So we effed around and we found out. So my roommate and I in college, we were both theater majors, which meant we were like complete slugs when it came to studying for anything. Um, and we both needed a science elective,
Yeah.
and we had very strict criteria about what that elective would be, and that was that it had to start afternoon. Otherwise, there was no way we'd make it there, right? Because we were
Okay.
usually up all night. So there were two classes we had to pick from. One was like a biology class that we heard was kind of hard, but there was a computer science class
Oh,
that we
geez.
heard was really, really, really hard. But Professor Ed, if you happen to be hearing this, I'm just gonna, and you might be because you were really young at the time. Um, I'm gonna fully admit that my roommate and I, um, the deciding factor in picking your computer science class is
She
that
was cute.
you were a complete smoke show, and
Okay.
or is in the vernacular of the day, you were a fox.
A
Um,
fox.
and as wrong as that is,
It's
that's
not
what
wrong.
happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where the FAFO part came in because we figured, like every other class, we could screw around and then eventually charm our way through at the end.
Never
No,
did that. I have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah, it just completely blew up on our faces.
Oh
I don't
my
know.
gosh.
I can't. I have to ask him what he did because we're still good friends. But my GPA was a mess, so I had to retake the class.
Oh
The
my gosh.
second time through, I was like her golden child. I was super
Aw.
motivated, super motivated. I don't think there was a
Aw.
high enough A she could have given me. Now that might have had something to do with the fact that there was a lab assistant who one day looked at me and she said, "Nobody spends this much time in the lab." And I, I said, "I'm just trying to really do good in this class." And she's just said, "Uh huh." And so, well, I did the thing and I went out and got her flowers and then we went out some. So
That's
we
nice.
went on some dates. So we had a good time for a few months.
That's
But
awesome.
so so then at some point, getting back to Professor Ann, so I was
Yes.
motivated by Marie, the lab assistant.
Yes.
And then Professor Ann near the end of the class says, "Why are you wasting your time with this theater crap? You'll never make any money. Don't
That
you want to
point.
have a good job and raise a family?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And so she doesn't ask, "Why don't you go to Ball State University and talk to Dr. Felling? He's the chair of the computer science department."
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, following directions. I go over there and talk to Dr. Felling. And he's like, I see Ann sent you. And I said, yeah. He goes, okay, well, classes start, blah, blah, blah. You better go get registered. You've got a lot of undergrad classes to take to make up
Yeah.
before you can get your master's. And I said, isn't there like an entrance exam or anything? And he said, Ann was your entrance exam.
Oh, wow.
So
There
And
you go.
if you're watching this, thank you. And and obviously, I'm now, I've been CIO, different companies for like
Yeah.
15 years now. This has made a tremendous difference in my life. And
Yeah.
the point I want to make in regard to the last story you told is
Yeah.
that difference was completely driven by two women.
Yes.
And the first class I took at Ball State was a woman teaching the class. And most of my classmates in even in the master's level, the computer science
For
stuff,
women.
were women.
Yeah.
And this was real STEM stuff. This was not the business college, right? There
Yeah.
was like we all had to take higher order math. This is deep STEM. And so when somebody says, how come there aren't more women in computer science? I always say, where did they go? Because in my mind, they were always there. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's changed, but something
Yeah.
changed. So to me, that was a life-changing moment, driven by this professor, a little bit by the pretty lab assistant, but yeah, and me doing what I'm told because I'm at least that smart.
Glenn Keller, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really, really, really appreciate you and our time together. For those of us that are following along at home, check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and of course, LinkedIn. Until next time, thank you very much and have a great day. Thanks, Glenn.
Okay, bye, Teresa. Bye, everybody.
Bye.